For the Feast of the Transfiguration, I'm going to read the vision that Jesus gave Maria Valtorta, which was on the 5th of August 1944. I'm with my Jesus upon a high mountain. Peter, James and John are with Jesus. They climb higher up, and their eyes rove over open horizons, the details of which are well defined, even in the distance, in the beautiful clear day. The mountain is not part of a range of mountains like the one in Judea. It rises isolated, with the east in front, with respect to the place where we are, the north to the left, the south to the right, and at the rear to the west, the summit, which is about 100 steps higher up. It is very high, and the view extends over a very wide range. The Lake of Gennesaret looks like a strip of sky that has come down to be set in the green of the earth, an oval turquoise enclosed by emeralds of various shades, a mirror that trembles and ripples in a light breeze, and on which boats in full sail glide as nimbly as seagulls, lightly bent towards the blue water, exactly with the grace of the flight of a kingfisher skimming the water in search of prey. Then a vein flows out from the vast turquoise. It is pale blue where the riverbed is wider, and darker where the banks narrow and the water is deeper, and in the shade of the trees that grow luxuriantly near the river nourished by its water. The Jordan looks like an almost straight stroke of a brush in the greenery of the plain. Some villages are scattered here and there on both sides of the river. Some are only a handful of houses. Others are somewhat larger, with the airs of little towns. The main roads are yellowish lines among the green. But here, on the side of the mountain, the plain is more cultivated and fertile, and it is really beautiful. The various hues of the several growths are a more pleasant sight in the beautiful sunshine of a very clear day. It must be springtime, perhaps the month of March if I take into account the latitude of Palestine, because I see the corn, which is already high, although still green, waving like a blue-green sea. And I see the crests of the early fruit trees decorate this little vegetable sea with something like tiny white and rosy clouds, and meadows strewn with the flowers of the high hay, where grazing sheep look like piles of snow spread here and there on the green grass. Just a pause for a moment. We can contrast the barren nature of that part of the world, Israel, Palestine, today, compared to its lush nature 2,000 years ago. In fact, if we look in the Old Testament, we see how when some boys mocked Elisha for his bald head, a bear comes out and kills them. Well, bears couldn't live in an environment which had little vegetation. And in Jesus' day, which is centuries subsequent to Elisha's time, Israel is still lush and full of vegetation. In fact, somewhere in the poem of Man God Jesus describes how Israel will change, and that's part of the curse that falls upon the land because it killed God's Christ. But here we have a beautiful spectacle that's laid out for us in a very detailed way by Maria Valtorta. Continuing the narrative. Just near the mountain, on the low, short hills at its foot, there are two little towns, one to the south and the other to the north. The very fertile plain extends particularly and more widely to the south. Jesus, after a short rest in the cool shade of a group of trees, a pause which he certainly granted out of pity for Peter, who clearly has great difficulty in climbing, resumes going up. He goes almost to the top, where there is a grassy tableland, with a semicircle of trees near the side of the mountain. You may rest, my friends. I'm going over there to pray. And he points to a large stone, a rock that appears on the surface of the mountain, and is not near the slope, but it lies internally towards the summit. Jesus kneels on the grass and rests his hands and head on the rock, in the posture that he will take also when praying in Gethsemane. The top of the mountain protects him from the sun. The remaining part of the grass-covered clearing is in the bright sun as far as the bordering trees, where the apostles are sitting in the shade. Peter takes off his sandals, shakes off dust and grit, and remains barefooted, with his tired feet on the cool grass, almost lying down with his head resting on an emerald green tuft as a pillow. James does the same, but in order to be comfortable he looks for a tree against which he leans his mantle and rests his back. John remains sitting, looking at the Master, but the calm of the place, the fresh breeze, silence and fatigue overcome him also, and he droops his head and eyes. None of them are fast asleep, but they are in the state of summer drowsiness that stuns people. They are roused by a brilliancy that is so striking that it overwhelms the brightness of the sun and spreads and penetrates even into the shade of bushes and trees where the apostles are. They open their eyes and are astonished at seeing Jesus transfigured. He is exactly as I see in the visions of paradise. Of course, he has no wounds, and there is no banner of the cross. But the majesty of his face and body is the same. The brightness is also the same, and his garment too is identical. From deep red, it has changed into an immaterial fabric of diamonds and pearls, in which he is clad in heaven. His face shines with an extremely intense sidereal light, in which his sapphire eyes are beaming. He looks taller, as if his glorification had increased his height. I cannot say whether the brilliancy, which makes even the tableland phosphorescent, emanates entirely from him, or whether his own is mingled with the brightness that all the light of the universe and of heaven has concentrated on him. I can only say that it is something indescribable. Jesus is now standing. I would say that he is raised off the ground, because between him and the green meadow there is something like a luminous vapour, a space consisting only of a light upon which he seems to be standing. But it is so bright that I may be wrong, and the fact that I no longer see any green grass under Jesus' feet may be due to the bright light that vibrates and waves, as is often seen in bonfires. It is a snow-white, incandescent light. Jesus is looking at the sky and smiling at a vision that enraptures him. The apostles are almost afraid, and they call him, as he is transfigured so much that he no longer appears to be their master. Master, Master, they call in low voices, full of anxiety. He does not hear. He is in an ecstasy, says Peter, trembling. I wonder what he sees. The three are now standing up. They would like to approach Jesus, but they dare not. The light increases further because of two lights that descend from the sky and take place at Jesus' sides. When they settle on the tableland, their veils open and two majestic bright personages appear. One is more elderly than the other, with a sharp, severe countenance, and he has a double-pointed beard. Two horns of light depart from his forehead and make me understand that he is Moses. The other one is emaciated, bearded, and hairy, more or less like the Baptist, whom I would say he resembles in height, leanness, structure, and severity. While the light emanating from Moses is white, like that of Jesus, particularly with regard to the beams issuing from their foreheads, the light of Elijah is like the bright flame of the sun. The two prophets take a reverential attitude before their God incarnate, and although he speaks to them with familiarity, they do not drop their respectful attitude. I do not understand even one of the words they speak. Just a brief pause again. Don't want to lose sight of the fact that, which I didn't note, I don't think, when I first read this a long time ago. She describes Elijah as being someone who resembles the Baptist in height, leanness, structure, and severity. And it reminds me, as it perhaps no doubt reminds you, that the apostles are aware, and all of Israel is aware, that prophecy says Elijah is to come before Christ. And Jesus replies, Elijah did come, but you did not recognize him. And that Elijah was John the Baptist. So it becomes fascinating then to see how physically Elijah resembles John the Baptist. Now, this is not an argument for reincarnation. There is no reincarnation. Must underline that 3 times. But there's a sense in which John the Baptist is Elijah. Perhaps we can say the spirit of Elijah was on him or in him. So just having made that passing point, I shall resume the description. The 3 apostles fall on their knees, trembling and covering their faces with their hands. They would like to look, but they're afraid. At last Peter says, Master, listen to me. Jesus looks round smiling towards his Peter, who takes heart again and says, It is wonderful to be here with you, Moses and Elijah. If you wish, we will make 3 tents, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah, and we will stay here to serve you. Jesus looks at him again and smiles more warmly. He looks also at John and James, a glance that is a loving embrace. Also, Moses and Elijah stare at the 3. Their eyes flash fire. They must be like rays piercing hearts. The apostles dare not say anything more. Frightened as they are, they lapse into silence. They look as if they were inebriated, like people who are bewildered. But when a veil, which is neither fog, nor a cloud, nor a ray, envelops the 3 glorious personages behind a screen that is even brighter than the one that surrounded them previously and hides them from the sight of the apostles, a powerful, harmonious voice vibrates, filling the air. The 3 bow down with their faces on the grass. This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. Listen to him. Peter, on falling flat on his face, exclaims, Have mercy on me, a sinner. It is the glory of God descending. James does not utter a single word. John whispers with a sigh, as if he were about to swoon, The Lord is speaking. Even when there is total silence again, none of them dare raise their heads. Thus they do not even see that the light has come back to its natural state of daylight, and that Jesus is alone and has become the usual Jesus, wearing his red mantle. He walks towards them smiling. touches them, and calls them by their names. "Stand up, it is I. Be not afraid," he says, because the three dare not raise their faces and are imploring mercy for their sins, fearing that the Lamb of God wants to show them to the Most High. "Stand up now, I order you," repeats Jesus authoritatively. They look up and see Jesus smile. "O Master, my God," exclaims Peter, "how shall we be able to live near you now that we've seen your glory? How shall we be able to live among men and among ourselves, since we are sinners and we have heard the voice of God?" "You will have to live beside me and see my glory until the end. Be worthy of that, because the time is close at hand. Obey my Father and yours. Let us now go back among men, because I came to stay with them and to bring God to them. Let us go. Be holy, strong, and faithful in remembrance of this hour. You will take part in my greater glory. But do not speak now to anybody of what you have seen. Do not tell your companions either. When the Son of Man has risen from the dead and gone back to the glory of the Father, then you will speak, because it will be necessary to believe then to take part in my kingdom." Just another pause for a moment. We have Peter exclaiming, "O Master, my God." And this is a reminder or an echo of what St. Thomas will say later on after his doubts have been dealt with, after he puts his finger in Jesus' side. He says, "My Lord and my God." And that may seem to be, the Jehovah's Witnesses say, well, it's an exclamation, although the underlying Greek is not like that. The underlying Greek is "the Lord of me and the God of me." But it's not an isolated case, clearly. It's not as if at the end of John's Gospel, John is wanting us to believe that then, after the resurrection and the appearances, only then do the apostles see Jesus as God. No, they see him as God during the public ministry and very early on, as actually a careful reading of the Synoptic Gospels tells us, and as Maria Valtorta's expanded information about the Gospels tells us. And in this particular case, just one example, Peter calling Jesus God explicitly. To resume. "But is Elijah not to come to prepare people for your kingdom? So the rabbis say." "Elijah has already come," says Jesus, "to prepare the way for the Lord. Everything is happening as was revealed. But those who teach revelation do not know and do not understand it. Neither do they see or recognize the signs of the time or the messengers of God. Elijah has come back once. He will come for the second time, when the last time is close at hand, to prepare the last for God. He now comes to prepare the first for the Christ, and men refused to acknowledge him. They tortured him and put him to death. They will do the same to the Son of Man, because men do not want to acknowledge what is good for them." The three lower their heads and become pensive and sad while descending the mountain with Jesus by the same road they came up. That's the end of that vision for that time in August 1944. But it was something that I didn't realise when I started reading this, that Jesus would speak of the point about Elijah that I made earlier, that Elijah has already come. And in fact, Jesus adds something that we would not otherwise know from the Gospels. I'll just read it. Elijah has come back once. Okay, that's John the Baptist then, what I was talking about earlier. But he adds immediately, he will come for the second time when the last time is close at hand to prepare the last for God. So we're in the realm of the end times here. Elijah is going to come back then. Now we know that there are the two witnesses in the book of Revelation. It may be that there is a reference to Elijah having returned. As I've said on previous occasions, the dictations themselves are given not in chronological order always to Maria Valtorta. They're given for various reasons at different times. For example, the feast days of the church. She might get a vision relevant to that feast day. Or Jesus might avoid giving her a particularly difficult vision if she is not in the right psychological frame of mind. That is, she's upset by something, or it just seems too harsh given her physical ailments. But at the very end, he gets everything knit together by telling her where to put each vision, so that the whole work that we have now is a perfect chronological stream. So after the vision that I've just read, Jesus gives a vision on 3rd of December 1945, which is added on to this one. I won't go into what that is, but on that date, after that vision of December 1945, Jesus says, and here, PM, that's Father Migliorini, I believe, can now put the comment on the vision of August the 5th, 1944, beginning from the words, I am not choosing you for the only purpose of making you acquainted with the sadness and the sorrows of your master. Those who are able to stay with me sharing my grief must share my glory as well. And Jesus says then, and you, my faithful little John, have a rest because you well deserve it. May my peace bring joy to you. So now we have the commentary of Jesus on the vision of the Transfiguration that he gave on the 5th of August 1944. Jesus says, I'm not choosing you for the only purpose of making you acquainted with the sadness and sorrows of your master. Those who are able to stay with me, sharing my grief, must share my joy as well. When you are before your Jesus and he shows himself to you, I want you to have the same feelings of humility and repentance as my apostles had. You must never be proud. You would be punished by losing me. You must always bear in mind who I am and who you are. You must always remember your faults and my perfection, so that your heart may be cleansed by contrition. But at the same time, you must put so much trust in me. I said, be not afraid, stand up, let us go. Let us go among men, because I have come to be with them. Be holy, strong and faithful, in remembrance of this hour. I say so also to you, and to all my favourites among men, to those who have me in a special way. Be not afraid of me. I show myself to you to elevate you all, not to incinerate you. Stand up. May the joy of the gift give you energy. And do not let it blunt your minds with the savour of quietism, considering yourselves already saved, because I have shown heaven to you. Just pause Jesus' comments there. Quietism is a problem, a deviation from the faith, a heresy of some centuries ago, which was as if you did not need to do anything in the world. You just basically contemplate God or Christ. And it may be, one might say, I don't know sufficient about it. It may be an offshoot of the idea of you're saved by faith alone, the Protestant error. Because if you feel that way, then why do you need to do anything in the world, let alone change yourself? But certainly, why would you need to do things out in the world if you are guaranteed salvation? Resuming Jesus' comments. Let us go together among men. I have invited you to superhuman deeds by means of superhuman visions and lessons, so that you may be of greater help to me. I make you partners in my work, but I have never had, and I never have, a minute's rest, because evil never rests, and good must be always active to make void the work of the enemy as much as possible. We shall rest when the time is accomplished. Now we must proceed untiringly. We must work continuously and sacrifice ourselves unremittingly for the harvest of God. May my continuous contact sanctify you. May my continuous teaching fortify you. And may my fond love for you make you faithful against all snares. Do not be like the old rabbis who taught the revelation but did not believe in it, to the extent of not being able to recognize the signs of the time and the messengers of God. Just pause again there. When Jesus speaks about the old rabbis, that's the rabbis of his day, they had the Old Testament. They could see the signs of the times and the messengers of God, but they turned away from it. They willfully blinded themselves because of wickedness. The sign of the times, for example, a key sign of the times is that in chapter 9 of the book of Daniel, we have a timeline given to Daniel by the angel Gabriel, by which it is possible to work out when the Messiah will appear on the earth. And that is the very time when Jesus, in fact, appeared on the earth. So the rabbis were alerted immediately to the possibility that this man may be the Messiah. And then they had John the Baptist, who expressly said that he was announcing the coming of the Messiah. When questioned, he spoke about the Messiah, and then he identified him directly when baptizing him in the Jordan River. So the rabbis had every means to know what the truth was and what they then should have started speaking and teaching to the people. Resuming then what Jesus has to say. Ensure that you recognize the precursors of the Christ in his second coming, because the powers of the Antichrist are on the march, and making an exception on the limit I have imposed on myself, because I know that you drink in certain truths, not with a supernatural spirit, but out of thirst for human curiosity. I solemnly tell you that what many people think is the victory over the Antichrist, the peace now close at hand, will be only a pause to give the enemy of the Christ time to acquire new strength, to dress his wounds and gather his army for a fiercer struggle. I best pause again there, because one needs to remember where this monologue of Jesus is situated in. It's given on the 5th of August 1944. That's then almost exactly 2 months after the D-Day landings. And when those landings took place and the beachhead was established, it was clear that the writing was on the wall for the Axis powers. Italy was already under occupation by Nazi Germany, Mussolini having fallen already, and the Vatican was surrounded by German troops. So the entirety of Europe was hoping for, expecting a liberation, and was going to get it. And there was a natural exuberance But Jesus is here cautioning that although that victory will come, that as he says, the peace now close at hand, it will only be temporary. And yes, we've had it in a way, particularly us in Europe, for decades. Never mind thinking about what's going on outside in the rest of the world, which has been often horrific. But we've had a certain peace ourselves. But we must not delude ourselves. There's going to be other conflicts, worse conflicts. There's no war to end all wars, to coin a phrase of Lloyd George's, if I'm right. There's going to be worse coming over the horizon. So resuming Jesus' comments. Since you are the voices of your Jesus, of the King of Kings, of the faithful and truthful King who judges and fights with justice and will defeat the beast and his servants and prophets, ensure that you know what is your good and follow it forever. Let no false appearance entice you. Let no persecution terrify you. Let your voices repeat my words. Just again, I need to pause because you'll be wondering perhaps, who are these voices? Well, he's speaking to all of us as his voices. We are to speak for him in the world. But there are individuals who are voices in a special sense. Maria Valtorta is one of those. Those who receive messages from him and visions from him and are to communicate those to the world. And we can say that insofar as we attach ourselves to those kinds of voices, those supernatural voices, we can be joining with Jesus in the work that he wants done, in spreading the messages he's been giving out since the last book of the New Testament was written. Because the Catholic faith is not just a faith of the book, as the Muslims say, people of the book. One might say the Protestants are people of the book, but the Muslims certainly can't say that of the Catholics. Public revelation ended with the death of the last apostle, as the church has always taught. But there are private revelations which can edify and illuminate the public revelation that has been once for all given to the saints. And so we can say, if we propagate the poem of the man God, the gospel is revealed to me, as it's also known. If we propagate, say, Sister Josefa Menendez, whom Jesus refers to as well, and her way of divine love. If we propagate the various apparitions of the Blessed Virgin, of La Salette, of Lourdes and Fatima, then we are partaking in the work that Jesus wants us to conduct, and we are voices for him, voices of his. We are voices speaking his voice. So, hope that's clear. I'll resume now. And if on the earth you should share the same destiny as the Christ, as his precursor and Elijah, a sanguinary destiny, or a destiny subjected to moral torture, smile at the future safe destiny you will enjoy with the Christ, with his precursor and his prophet. We shall be equal in our work, in our grief, in our glory. Here, I am the master and the example. There, I shall be the reward and the king. To have me will be your blessedness. It will mean forgetting sorrow. It will be what no revelation is yet sufficient to make you understand. Because the joy of the future life is by far superior to the possibility of imagination of a human creature still joined to a human body.